He took a puff of that magic mushroom he had bought from the dark web, and it felt good at first. But then, a strange sensation settled in, as he realized he would have to board a plane soon. It was his first time doing this. Joseph Emerson had struggled for 6 years with the death of his best friend. While on a commemorative weekend trip, he consumed psychedelic mushrooms for the first time. Their effects persisted for days and throughout the flight. As he boarded the Alaska Airlines jet to return home as an off-duty jump seat occupant, his fear turned into a complete loss of reality. The sense of being trapped intensified. He started thinking that he wasn't heading home and that the flight, the pilots, and the aircraft were not real. His delusion of reality led to a catastrophic action. He reached for the 2 red engine shutoff levers and pulled them. This critical sequence, placing 83 lives in immediate danger, lasted approximately 30 seconds. Observing the pilot's response, Emerson offered to leave the flight deck by himself. His episode, however, persisted in the main cabin. In a renewed attempt to awaken himself, he placed his hand on the emergency cabin door lever. Recognizing his lack of control, Emerson requested to be handcuffed for the safety of the flight. Upon landing, Emerson was taken into custody. It was later confirmed that the severe and prolonged psychological consequence of his drug use were real. He accepted full responsibility and had 83 different charges, one for every passenger on that plane. FedEx Flight 705. Auburn R. Calloway was facing imminent dismissal from FedEx for falsifying his prior military flight hours. He thus planned to commit a high-altitude suicide, crashing the aircraft and making the deaths of the crew appear consistent with a fatal accident. His motivation was simple. If he was a casualty of an accident, his children could get his $2.5 million life insurance policy. Federal Express Flight 705 was ready to take off from the tarmac. In the cockpit were 3 veteran crew members: Captain David Sanders, First Officer James M. Tucker, and Flight Engineer Andrew H. Peterson. Calloway was a deadhead passenger, commuting to his next flight. Concealed within a guitar case were his weapons: 2 claw hammers, 2 club hammers, a spear gun, and a knife. He had practiced striking blows designed to mimic the blunt force trauma of a plane crash. The aircraft took off at 3:16 p.m., with Calloway settled quietly in the jump seat behind the cockpit. For 26 minutes, the crew engaged in casual conversations as the DC-10 climbed. Then, Calloway slipped out of the cockpit, grabbed his weapons, and returned. Without warning, Calloway lunged, aiming his hammer at the crew's heads with savage efficiency. Flight Engineer Peterson was struck multiple times, fracturing his skull and severing his temporal artery. First Officer Tucker's head was hammered with such force that bone shards entered his brain. Captain Sanders, though hit and severely injured, remained functional. Calloway momentarily ceased his hammer attack and retreated to retrieve the spear gun, intending to finish his victims. First Officer Tucker, unable to use his body, started forcing the massive DC-10, an airliner not designed for aerobatics, into a series of radical, high-G maneuvers. Peterson, bleeding profusely, grabbed the spear gun's shaft to prevent Calloway from firing. Captain Sanders, his right ear partially torn off, wrestled the hammer away from the assailant. Tucker then put the plane into a nosedive, sending the wrestling men flying to the back of the plane. There, Calloway hit Captain Sanders again with the hammer, rendering him almost unconscious. Peterson, gathering his last powers, launched at Calloway and successfully took his hammer and then hit him with it, putting a stop to the fight. With Calloway temporarily defeated, the next ordeal began. Landing a multi-engine jet at high speed, thousands of pounds over its maximum landing weight, with an almost paralyzed pilot. Sanders took control, ignoring the terrifying sounds of the ground proximity warning system. He began a rapid descent, executing a series of sharp turns to bleed off altitude and speed. The DC-10 touched down with 35,000 pounds over its maximum landing weight. Upon landing, police apprehended a partially conscious Calloway. First Officer Tucker suffered a fractured skull, partial paralysis, and was left partially blind. Flight Engineer Peterson had a skull fracture and a severed artery. Captain Sanders required surgery to reattach his ear. Auburn R. Calloway was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in federal prison after pleading mental insanity, trying to prove that he wasn't consciously hijacking the plane.